So hi, how's it going? In this presentation, we're going to look at what are the benefits of using podcasts and video clips, both for the teacher and for the student. So we'll just move on. So when a teacher creates a podcast, there's lots of different benefits for the student, basically. Like from the point of view of revision, the student can rewind and replay the podcast at will. They'll have it as audio notes, and then they'll be focused on that and rather than on your note taking, because a lot of times you have your students taking notes and they're actually not really listening. They're just trying to get little bits of information down the page, and whether they actually ever go back to them to actually revise them is another thing, basically. The teacher can also provide a weekly recap via podcast of the subject matter. So you might just maybe do a short podcast saying, okay, well, we covered this in class, and highlighting the key points in it, basically. One of the main advantages is the fact that it's flexible delivery. For example, if somebody's not attending because they're sick, or if the weather's bad, snow days, whatever, basically that they have the option then that you can say, you can listen to this, it'll be available on Moodle and you can listen to it in your own time, basically. It's also useful as a pre-class resource. So in other words, you kind of give them a bit of information in advance to let them know what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be working on, and then you'll have more time in class. Maybe if it's a practical aspect of the course that you have to do demonstration, experiment, and do actual practical tasks in the actual classroom itself. I've used this for flipped classrooms, where you basically get the students to listen to the podcast before the class in preparation for discussion. So for example, you students will be doing listen to an actual, not a podcast, but a video of instructional design, which Alison Egan prepared. And the idea then is that you bring that information back into the classroom for discussion the following week or the following month in our cases. So the whole idea of a flipped classroom works really well when it comes to podcasts, and more so, I suppose, for videocasts as well. The enhanced notes with videos and audio podcasts, teachers can provide some material to the actual class. So again, it's just kind of extra information that some students will read, listen to, and other students won't. And also in addition to that, then we have the e-learning, basically. So it literally is just another way of reinforcing and preparing for the visual material. Then we're just looking at video clips created by the teacher. Well, basically exactly the same as what a podcast does and more. It has a lot of visual instruction to perform specific tasks, really, really handy for things that you want your student to learn how to do. For example, mail merge in Word, or how to upload a video to YouTube. So it eliminates the repetition for the teacher for specific tasks. So like usually whenever I'm in a classroom showing somebody how to use mail merge, I would show it on the board first of all, on the whiteboard, but then I end up going around the class maybe 10 times showing specific students how to do it as well. So if they have the little video clip of how to actually do it, they can refer to it instead of me having to do it 10 times over. You can make sure it's very clear instruction and aim it at the level of your learner. So again, depending on the different learners, you might be more step-by-step approach, or you might be able to skip through different steps if they're more experienced, basically. The video clips as well can be included as part of the assessment. So we looked at the Ed Puzzle option, where you can add in questions to the actual video clips, and then you can actually assess the learner's learning. And also the fact that there's so many available online. Okay, there's abundance of them. Now, I suppose the disadvantage of that is there's so many available is that you have to look for the ones that actually is very relevant to what you want your student to see. That you're not kind of introducing subjects that really you're not going to get into, that you won't have time to get into, but also that that you're not actually introducing subjects that actually are not really part of your course either. Then when we talk about the ones that are created by the learner, okay, so really this is really like again very much a revision thing for oral learners or oral learners, where some learners find it easier to remember points that they record themselves revising. So like where they read out things, maybe their notes to themselves, and they record themselves, and then they can listen to it back and make sure that they're actually learning from it. The other thing is presentation, so we can allow our learners to actually give their opinions on a topic without embarrassment or shyness, but also if they want to actually record themselves presenting, and rather than having actually present in front of the class. Now that's not always an option, but it can sometimes be an option for assessment purposes as well. So you can actually say, right, well, if you record yourself or you record each other at home, that's fine. I'll accept that as your presentation for this course. Very easily accessible. So your apps, there's so many apps available now for mobile phones, which means that podcasts can be recorded at any time and place and easily played back as well. So they, again, sitting on the bus on the way home from college, the students can actually listen to their audio notes, things like that. And then we have our e-portfolios. So again, e-portfolio is such a big thing now, basically, and you're trying to make yours stand out from everybody else's. If you're applying for a job and you have your CV up there and you have different contents, you have your blog, things like that. So even just having a podcast so that your prospective employer can actually hear your voice and hear, how your person, a bit more about your personality. It's a really, really good thing as well to have a podcast. Now, obviously, a videocast works for that as well. So some of the challenges. But one of the problems in an FE college is that, if you provide too much of the information for the students in advance of the class, they just won't come in, okay? And if they know that they're going to get it even after the class online, they still won't come in, basically. Now, it's not really your job to chase your students and figure out where they are every day, but it is nice to have somebody in front of you when you go into a classroom. So I suppose, making it so that, there is enough information that if they cannot come in for a valid reason, that they actually will be able to keep up with the class, but at the same token that they're not going to actually stop actually coming into class is one of the main challenges, I suppose, I find. The relevance is very important to make sure your online content is relevant, and so therefore, are you better off making your own content? Are you better off, can you find stuff online that is actually relevant to the actual learning objective that you have for that particular part of the course? Obviously, time is a big challenge to actually find the time to actually generate your own content, to decide how you're going to use it. But then, sure, we're doing that for all our resources anyway, so it's just part of being a teacher, I suppose. One of the things I would worry about from my point of view, my students, is they tend to assume that if you are a person who uses online content, that they'll get everything they need there. So assume everything's available there. So they still miss out on so much by not being in the class. So you're not going to have everything on your actual podcast or your videocast or whatever. So they will miss out on a lot, and that's kind of that's to their disadvantage, I suppose, from that point of view. Sometimes I think we're too easy on our learners. We all have worked hard to get where we are, and we always try as teachers to make the learning easy, make it as accessible as possible, which makes sense. But also, sometimes they just have to learn to work hard, because in life you're going to have to work hard. So to me, that's one of my challenges as well, that maybe my learners would be a bit too inclined to go for the easy option. In other words, listen to my podcast just about, but not actually, put in the work then with regards to written materials and things like that. And then last, and probably, well, I won't say least, but what you say is gospel. One of the concerns, I suppose, is you're recorded. So if you have recorded something, and like everybody, we all make mistakes, and they have a recording of you. I suppose that's one of the concerns, basically, is the fact that it's recorded, and they can come back and say, you said this on such and such a day. So say, for example, a very simple example. Okay, so when was the Constitution written? 1937, but one day you just happen to say 1973, and they've recorded that, and you put that question into one of your exams, and they've written down 1973, and you mark it wrong, and then they come back to you and go, look, I have a recording here of you saying it was 1973. You're kind of bit. Students don't tend to do it so much in Ireland. In places like China, Singapore, places like that, everything is recorded. And in fact, if they actually come up at the end of class to ask you a question, they will literally shove their recording device or their phone in your face as you go to answer. So everything you say is recorded. So I suppose that would be another challenge as well.